Jon Barela. Mr. Barela has served the people of New Mexico as a public servant and a community leader for over 25 years. He has a bachelor's degree in history and diplomacy from Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service in Washington, D.C. When he joined the Congressional staff as we're changing mics. Okay. When he joined the congressional staff of Congressman Joe Skeen in 1987, he joined the law firm in New Mexico, and 4 years later he went back into public service to become New Mexico's Assistant Attorney General and Director of the Civil Division. In 1993, Jon joined Intel as Community and Government Relations Manager. Currently, he sits on the board of director of Suralink, a local technology startup company, and he is married and has 3 children. So, same format, Mr. Barela. Question number 1. Westside residents face many traffic issues.
See, it's the old lawyer in me, the recovering lawyer, the opening statement, right? And you have a jury here.
That's right. Okay, opening statement. 2 minutes, Mr. Barela.
Good try.
Well, thank you all very much for being here. It's an honor and a privilege for me to stand in front of you as my party's nominee for Congress. Before I get into the substance of my remarks, I'd like to introduce a couple of family members. If I could have my wife Gina stand up, please. She can stand by me. And also my mother and father-in-law. Yes, I'm going to introduce them. Mercy Clara Villarreal. Now, my in-laws live here on the west side, so they've been advising me on what I should be doing over here. But I got to tell you something. When they talk about the in-laws, you listen, right? That's what you do. Well, I'm very, very proud to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, this election is going to be about the jobs. It's going to be about the economy. It's about how we go about righting the ship and how we go about the notion of creating an economy that is sustainable. Now, while I respect my opponent in his office, we're going to have some deep philosophical differences in how we go about doing that. His voting record has been one of a lack of independence, unlike what he said in his closing statement. It has, in fact, been a rubber stamp for a big government, higher tax, bigger regulation agenda in Washington, D.C., which, quite frankly, has proven not to be very effective in creating jobs. Trail of promises made and promises broken, quite frankly, with respect to the debt and deficit that's been racked up. Over $1.2 trillion in, 19 months. And yet we have an unemployment rate of 9.5% nationwide when they promised it wouldn't go above 8%. And now they want your trust for another 2 years. And I say no. They had their shot, and quite frankly, I'm tired of them blaming the prior administration. They own the solution. And so we'll give them solutions.
All right, Mr. Barela. So I think, did you hear the first question?
You can repeat.
Okay.
Nice try.
Hey, you know what?
We're all right.
I'll probably make another mistake later on.
I gotta harass you anyway.
I got a lot of candidates to go.
He always gets the weather right.
Oh, I like that. I think I deserve that. I was going to say, deserves an applause. Okay. So Westside residents still face many traffic issues. What will you do to address the deficiencies on I-25 at Paseo del Norte, Montano and Coors, and the proposed northwest and southwest loop? 2 minutes.
Well, the first thing I'd ask is what happened to all that stimulus money? What about the shovel-ready project that we have? That would have been a long way to try to fix the infrastructure in not only our country but this local area. The fact of the matter is, if Mr. Heinrich had his way, according to his vote on City Council, roads over here would be very, very different. You wouldn't have any. The fact of the matter is, as a city councilor, he opposed the Paseo extension. The fact of the matter, y'all must not be from the west side. he also opposed expanding Montano from 2 to 4 lanes. Now, that's his record for Westside roads while he was a city councilor. But let me tell you, one of the things we need to do is focus on infrastructure needs in this country, which is long overdue. We had an opportunity, and while I did not support the stimulus spending, we still have a lot of money in the highway transportation bill for infrastructure that has gone to other places in other states. And you know, when I served on the House Appropriations Committee staff, I saw firsthand how very often that process worked. And one of the things we need to do is make sure that we have a viable, effective transportation plan, which we do here have on the West Side. Let me point out that as your congressman, I won't do a U-turn on philosophical issues related to infrastructure and roads in the West Side. I believe it's an integral element to growth on the West Side. I will fight for it. I will be consistent in fighting for it. And it's integral to economic development here on the West Side as well.
And final question, sir, as our congressman, how would you create quality employment opportunities on the West Side and prepare future job candidates with the skill sets necessary to fill these positions? 2 minutes.
Well, that's a two-part question. One of the things we need to do is talk about creating jobs, period. You don't create jobs by creating another debt and more debt for our future. $1.2 trillion of new debt, as I mentioned, $13.3 trillion overall in this economy, $43,000 per man, woman, and child. That's not how you go about the notion of creating jobs, period, whether it's in America or whether it's here on the West Side. One of the things that we need to do is get off the backs of small business. We need to get off the backs of small business. And unfortunately, my opponent's voting record is to get on the backs of small business and try to strangle and suffocate them. Don't believe me, believe the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business. He has a 20% voting record with the NFIB, which is the biggest advocate for small business in this country. A 20% rating. And unfortunately, if you believe in that small business and small employers are in fact the generators of jobs, then we need to focus on how we help small business. Simplifying taxes, not making them more complex. Streamlining regulations, not adding more. But closely related to job creation is in fact the notion that we need to do something badly about our public education system, no doubt about that. And I don't blame teachers. Let me just state that from the beginning. My dad worked in the education system in Las Cruces, and this may surprise some. I do have problems with the NCLB. That was a well-intentioned law that unfortunately did go astray, but it's exactly why I think that Washington, D.C. should not be meddling in the affairs of local governments and local governments. Finally, we need a seamless workforce development system. As chairman, former chairman of the Workforce Development Board in New Mexico, I understand that and we'll work toward that.
Okay, so now we have 2 minutes for your closing statements.
Thank you again. I want to thank you, Joe, for doing this, and the Westside Coalition. Thank you all for helping us with that. I appreciate it. Well, as I said before, and certainly the last 2 months of the campaign, we're going to see this election revolve around jobs and the economy. Mr. Heinrich's going to want to localize the election, and while I appreciate what he's done to localize this election, make no mistake about it, this is about jobs. It's about how we go about making this economy grow again. I want to tell you, I think it's important that we keep in mind the very basic philosophy of how this country became great. And let me be very clear, I want to apologize for the greatness of this country. And the basic philosophy that I will bring in Washington, D.C. is what I call a society of opportunity and ownership. Not necessarily ownership over worldly goods, but ownership over your personal lives and your business lives. Not defer to people in Washington, D.C. to make decisions for you, and therefore become dependent upon those decisions, which is exactly what this Congress is doing and what Mr. Heinrich has voted for. I will always, as a native New Mexican, be a New Mexican and an American first. And while I'm proud to be a Republican, I'm also proud to know that I've got a lot of independents and a lot of Democrats who have crossed over and found a home in this campaign, and I'm proud of that. My pledge to you tonight is that I will never blindly follow a political party. I will never blindly follow a political leader. What I pledge is that I will follow all of you and listen to all of you and do my best to be your next congressman and proudly represent this great state and this great district. Thank you all very much. Ladies and gentlemen.